Hello Creepy Cassettes, welcome back to Creepy Cassette, your place for horror in reality and beyond. I am your host Dee, and if this sort of skin crawly content is your cup of tea, please hit that like button, that subscribe button, and the notification bell so you'll know every time I drop another video. Can I just say before we even get started with this, Snuff Bomb or Steve Aikens has a mind for true horror. Reading these stories was creepy to say the absolute least, and at the worst, bone-tremblingly terrifying. I mean, we're going to get in the story. I won't read it in its entirety here, but I've collected some key points about the character and his origins, and we are going to discuss those, and I'll give a brief synopsis of the two Laughing Jack stories that are most mainstream at this point. Let's get started. We all know Laughing Jack to be a fiction, nothing more than the brainchild of an author who deserves all their flowers for a well-written horror masterpiece. But for one 12-year-old from Indiana, Jack became a very real and very dangerous inspiration. An inspiration that eventually led her to kill. Jack is described as being a clown creature stuffed with nothing more than fluff. He has dark, soulless eyes, abnormally large fingers that almost scrape the floor when he walks, sharp teeth, matted and tangled black hair. He didn't always look like this. He used to have bright red hair, a long cone nose, rainbow-colored attire, until he found himself abandoned for 13 years by his original owner. Like most Jack in the Box toys, his theme song is a demented version of Pop Goes the Weasel. Jack is considered to be a demonic entity by some. He possesses dark magic, telekinesis, and the ability to teleport in a puff of black smoke. He also has the ability to create hallucinations and nightmares for his victims. He preys on little kids, killing them and psychologically torturing their parents. Laughing Jack makes his introduction on DeviantArt March 3rd, 2013. The first story told about this terror clown was about a single mother raising her son James. James doesn't have any friends, and in his vulnerability, Jack comes in. The mother catches her son talking to someone in the yard, and he tells her that he has a new friend named Laughing Jack. James gives her an idea of what Jack looks like, and his mother brushes him off, thinking James has an imaginary friend. That night, she has a dream that she is being drawn unwillingly through an amusement park to the tune of Pop Goes the Weasel. When she gets to the big top tent, she is torn limb from limb by mangled children as a malicious laugh sounds off in the background. It's thought that these children are the ghosts of some of Jack's victims. When she wakes up, one of James's action figures is on the bedside table facing her. She talks to James about it, and he says it was Laughing Jack, to which she rolls her eyes and just tells him to tell Laughing Jack to keep his toys in his own room. One day, she takes a long nap and realizes that James has been outside for 2 hours unattended. She finds him sitting alone on the sidewalk eating a piece of candy. She asks where he got the candy from, to which James says it came from Laughing Jack. She threw away the remaining candies and made him spit out the one in his mouth. Nothing happened to James, so she thought she might be overreacting. However, that night she wakes up to a loud bang in her kitchen. She goes downstairs, finds her kitchen in complete disarray, and the family dog dead and hanging from a light fixture. The pup's stomach was cut open and stuffed with same type of candy that James had been eating earlier in the day. She went up to James's room to find the place destroyed and urine-soaked James cowering in his bed. She takes the child to the neighbor's home and calls the police. When the police investigate, they find 2 rooms trashed and a dead pup, but nothing else. The next night, she pulls out some old baby monitors and places one in James's room and the other in her own. She grabs a knife from the kitchen and lays it by her bedside table. Just as she's beginning to doze off after trying to stay up and protect her boy, she hears the terrifying laughter from her dream, and she runs into James's room with a knife. When she opens the door, she finds James nailed to a wall by his hands and feet. His abdomen cut open, organs spilling out, floor covered in blood. His eyes and tongue had also been cut out, and his chest cavity was filled with candy. But James's heart was still beating. She hears Jack and attempts to stab him. He disappears in a puff of black smoke, and when she sees who she's actually gotten hold of, it's James. She stabbed him right, his still beating heart. The cops pick her up and take her to a home for the criminally insane, where she is still plagued with the sound of Pop Goes the Weasel outside her door at night. Snuff Bomb returns with Laughing Jack origin story on December 13th of 2013. This story is surprisingly even more demented and gruesome than the original story. story. We find out that Laughing Jack was created by a guardian angel for a lonely little boy named Isaac Grossman in 1800s England. He was designed to take on the personality of his owner. Like James of the first story, he does not have any friends, and on top of his social isolation, he lives with 2 abusive parents. His bedroom is a dusty and drafty attic. His father is an alcoholic who works long hours, and when he comes home, he is both physically and sexually violent to his wife. Isaac's mother homeschools him, and she is also verbally and physically abusive to the little boy. There are times when Isaac witnesses his parents going at it from the position he is in, frightened and shaking. One Christmas, he wakes up to find a jack-in-the-box, which excites the poor kid who has never had a brand new toy, having nabbed the few toys he has from toys that were abandoned by other children. He cranks the handle. The familiar "Pop Goes the Weasel" plays, and he sings "Last Pop Goes the Weasel" line. When nothing happens, he assumes the box is broken and puts it down at the end of his bed. He goes to get dressed across the room, and then he starts to hear a shaking, and the lid of the box pops open, and out comes Jack with his multicolored costume of feathered shoulders, red hair, cone nose, and a bright smile. Isaac and Jack hit it off as expected, and Jack tells him that they are now best friends. They play for a little bit before Isaac is called by his mother to start his schoolwork. All day long, he tries to convince her that he has a new friend, a clown man that lives in his room. Somehow, he manages to lure her to the room, but when the door is open, Jack is nowhere to be found. Isaac's mother slaps him, calling him a useless worm, asking who would ever want to be his friend, and then punishes him to spend the rest of the night in his room without dinner. Shitty parents, really. He goes to his room, Jack is there, and Isaac asks him why he disappeared. Jack told him that his parents can't know about him and that they can just play together. Jack gives him candies to eat for dinner, and the two play all night. For 3 months, the two are inseparable, until one day, Jack and Isaac are outside playing and they come across the neighbor's cat. Jack grabs the cat with his supernaturally stretchy arms, has the animal in a suffocating maze of tangled limbs. The constriction eventually kills the animal, and the two just decide to throw the corpse over the neighbor's fence. They go back to Isaac's room, and not long later, Isaac is called down and confronted about the dead cat by his mother. He tries to tell her that it was Jack who killed the cat. Obviously, she doesn't believe him. He is told that he is being sent away to boarding school. Isaac relays the info to Jack, who is sorry because he knows it was his fault the cat is dead. Isaac promises Jack they will remain friends and he will return for him. What happens instead is that Isaac leaves for 13 years, eventually forgetting all about Jack. Over time, Jack's color fades away. He becomes a monotone black and white. His red locks become a matted mess of tangled black hair. His teeth go jagged. His arms hang abnormally long. When Isaac's father, during one of his usual violent fits, kills his mother and is soon after hanged, Isaac returns to the home. He's taken up a job as a carpenter and spends most of his nights drinking. One night he comes home drunk as usual, goes up to the attic with a pretty blonde girl with sapphire eyes. Jack sees the encounter going on and he is jealous, having waited so long for Isaac, and finally, when he returns, his attention is going to this girl. Isaac and the girl are flirting and seem to be hitting it off until she refuses Isaac's advances and slaps him. This causes Isaac to fly into a violent rage and eventually ends in him bludgeoning the girl to death with a candlestick holder. Jack sees the whole thing from the rusty old shelf his box stands on. At the beginning of the encounter, he is horrified at what he sees, and then something snaps and he is entertained and delighted by watching the carnage ensue. It was also at this point that Isaac officially snaps. Since Jack takes on the personality traits of his owner, he takes on Isaac's darkness. Isaac decides that night to quit drinking in favor of a much more sinister vice. A day or so later, Isaac returns home with some of his work tools and he dismembers the girl's body using some of her pieces to create a chair and dissolves the remaining parts in some sort of chemical. Jack is still sitting on the rusty shelf just watching. Isaac essentially turns his childhood bedroom into a murder dungeon. He strips the mattress on the bed, attaches some boards to it, and a set of wrist and shackle cuffs. He then spends a few days carving a wooden mask and then paints it white. From there, his career as a serial killer begins. He picks up a little boy around 5 or 6 and carries him into the attic in a burlap sack. He tortures the child child, pulling his nails off with a plier, crushing his kneecap, and skinning his face before eventually putting him out of his misery. He then lures an old blind woman into the house with the promise of a cup of tea. When she realizes what she has gotten herself into, she attempts to run away and instead falls down the stairs. Isaac follows and uses an ice pick to end her. He also captures a little girl, force feeds her glass before using her as a punching bag. Jack has a front row seat to every act of violence, and weeks went by and Isaac's killing spree continues. One day, the rusty nails of his holding shelf break, and down comes Jack's box. Isaac goes to pick the box up. He twirls the handle as an eerie, amelodic version of Pop Goes the Weasel comes out of the box. He sings just the last line, much like he did when he was a child, and when the song ends, nothing happens, so he puts the box down and goes about his business, before hearing an eerie Isaac. Jack has finally been released from his wooden prison after so long, and he is nothing like the clown he used to be. Jack decides to give Isaac a taste of his own medicine after mentioning that he has waited for a long time to play with his best friend for life one last time. And in a rather ironic and honestly deserved turn of events, Laughing Jack nails Isaac to the torture bed. He cuts out his tongue, sews a metal tube down his throat to keep his airway open, and when Isaac attempts to close his eyes so he doesn't have to bear witness to the trauma being done to his body, Jack uses fish hooks to pin his eyes open. He removes Isaac's lips and shatters his teeth with a hammer. He then slices open Isaac's chest cavity, blows up a piece of his intestines, and creates a macabre poodle from the organs. He pulls out one of the kidneys and throws it away, remarking, "Kidneys really aren't my thing." A clear nod to Eyeless Jack, and if you haven't seen that video, it is the last video I posted, so check it out here. And when Isaac starts drifting into terminal slumber, Jack revives him with a long adrenaline-needled eye, effectively removing the eye from the socket, allowing it to hang freely from his face. Jack pokes a hole in Isaac's abdomen and opens his mouth wide to release a bunch of cockroaches into Isaac's open abdominal cavity. He whispers to Isaac that it's been fun, and now he is leaving to offer his malevolent friendship to other lonely children around the world. For the final blow, Jack reaches into Isaac's chest and removes his still beating heart. Isaac's body is found weeks later by authorities, bloated, mangled, and with a creepy, demented smile on his face. Again, Snuff Bomb. Dude, I would hate to be privy to your nightmares because holy poopy, they have to be dark. Let's talk about the real murder. But as we all know, sometimes fiction overlaps with reality. In this case, the pull of Laughing Jack causes an already mentally ill preteen to do the unthinkable. The night of July 23rd, 2015, a 12-year-old girl from Elkhart, Indiana, who we will call JT, as her real identity has been hidden since she was a minor at the age of the crimes, set multiple fires in her bedroom and bedroom closet. Her father goes into her room attempting to put out the blazes. Her stepmother, Maria Torres, screamed that JT had a knife. JT stabbed Maria multiple times in the face and abdomen. Maria banged on JT's half-sister's door. When she got the girl's attention, she told her to call the police and remarked that she was dying. JT's dad, Edwin, ushered the children out of the apartment complex. When he turned back, JT was standing at the doorway of the complex with a strange posture, using a clown-like voice, still wearing the creepy grin she had been wearing earlier during dinner that night with Maria and Edwin. Edwin said he did not even recognize his daughter. Her behavior was so out of character. Edwin tried to get her away from the building. JT just told him to get away using the strange voice, and then she eventually stabbed her father. He was able to wrestle the knife away. JT escapes to a local park where she and her friend JP were set to meet. The two carried spare clothes, food, and water with the intent to run away. Maria was carried out of the apartment and taken to a hospital where she was later pronounced dead. It was found that the killing blow was a 3 3/4-inch wound to her chest. The police showed up at the apartment complex, blocking the place off and asking questions. They were surprised to find that the culprit was a 12-year-old girl, but this 12-year-old had been suffering from a mental health crisis for months. Her grades were slipping, and she started isolating herself, having bad headaches and blacking out. She had also developed at least 2 alter egos in that time. Their names were Star and Anna. Star was her malicious personality, the one that would tell her to hurt herself and others, and Anna was the side that would tell her not to listen to Star. Her friend JP was aware of her alter egos and remarked that the night of the killings, she thought she was talking to Star. JT also started dressing in black and white, painting her skin black and white, and had a preoccupation with candy, much like Laughing Jack. JT was bullied at school, and JP was her only friend. The two would get together and read creepypastas. They would also draw and write their own stories. JT asked her father for help with her mental health on multiple occasions, and he told her to simply shake it off. She also asked for help from her other family members. JT went to a counselor at her school who encouraged Edwin to take her to a mental health professional. Edwin instead took his daughter to see the family physician, who set JT up for a counselor, but due to insurance issues and her father having to have a back surgery, JT was never able to get to her appointments. The night of the murders, the girls walked the train tracks for hours. At some point, JT changed out of her bloodstained clothes and washed her hands in a waterway. When the two got hungry, they knocked on the door of a nearby house. They told the man that they had been hiking with their families and had gotten lost. The girls asked for food. The man brought the girls in and cooked them a meal while he called the police. When the police arrived, they found JT's bloody clothes and one of the backpacks, and both girls were arrested. JP was taken to the station and released, whereas JT was locked up in a local juvenile detention center, receiving some mental health treatment while she awaited trial. When asked why she committed the murder, she stated that Laughing Jack made her do it. The mental health treatments were working somewhat, but they were not completely healing her. Her public defender and family members worked on getting her into a mental health facility, which at first did not go well, and she was denied from 16 private and public facilities. The public defender even remarked that the system had failed the child. At an evidentiary hearing used to determine whether JT was competent to stand trial, 2 psychiatrists and a psychologist determined that she showed signs of dissociative identity disorder and PTSD. She was deemed not competent to assist in her own defense, and the mental health professionals suggested that she be sent to a Division of Mental Health and Addiction (DMHA) facility. The juvenile court concurred with the professionals' opinions and decided to have her sent to the DMHA facility until she was competent to stand trial. She was transferred to the LaRue Carter Hospital, and even that transfer was delayed because staff felt they did not have the experience returning juveniles to mental competency, and they were uncertain that it could be done. The elements of JT's life that led up to her conditions were an unstable childhood, abuse, and possible mental health struggles inherited from her mother. Investigations into the murders turned up some shocking search results in JT's phones. Search terms like how to hide from police, how to make poison, how to sharpen knives, how to survive in the woods, video of someone being stabbed, and a video of Pop Goes the Weasel song. Along with these searches, JT was found to have texted JP prior to the murder with a message about not being able to take it anymore and that she was going to snap. In our hearing during 2019, she admitted to stabbing her stepmother, but she also couldn't really remember much of what happened that night. She agreed that some of the events did take place. She was sentenced to supervised probation and to stay in the Ohio mental health facility where she had been a resident since 2017 until she is able to reintegrate in society. And I don't know what happened after that, although I did check. While we can't really say the Laughing Jack made her do it, who knows the extent that Jack's inspiration may have played on her already fragile psyche. Taking to dressing like the clown, using clown-like voices and strange postures, she must have felt some connection to the character. She comes from a similar background as James and Isaac. While she had JP, she was also a lonely girl who dealt with the struggles of bullying in a fairly dysfunctional family dynamic, and she was bounced between her father and mother, and may have even dealt with sexual abuse at the hands of the man that her mother remarried following her separation from Edwin. It's fair to think that she may have found some camaraderie in the clown and saw herself in the stories of the fictional victims. So Laughing Jack, honestly, if you have the stomach for it, read the 2 original stories. They are very well written and truly terrifying. If not, I hope you learned something from this video. On another note, please take care of your mental health and be willing to help your loved ones with their own. Mental health is just as important as physical health, so be careful. I hope that JT is able to reintegrate well into society and that she can live a fairly normal life. I'm sure it will be hard knowing that she caused the death of someone she was reportedly close to, but I wish the best for her and her family, and I also wish the best for you all, and take care.